This is SkyTour News for May 13th. I'm Amanda Curran. Today, in 1960, the first launch of the Delta satellite launching vehicle. Delta was an early American expendable launch system used for 12 orbital launches in the early 1960s. A derivative of the Thor Able, it was a member of the Thor family of rockets and the first member of the Delta family. The basic design of the original Vanguard upper stages, featuring a pressure-fed nitric acid UDMH regeneratively cooled engine, was kept in place, but with an improved AJ-10-118 engine. More significantly, the Delta stage featured cold gas attitude control jets, allowing it to be stabilized in orbit for restart and more precise burns. The Thor Delta was the first rocket to use the combination of a Thor missile and a Delta upper stage. This configuration was reused in a large number of later rockets, and a derivative, the Delta II, still remains in service. The Thor Delta launched a number of significant payloads, including the first communication satellite, Echo A1, the first British satellite, Ariel 1, and the first active direct relay communication satellite, Telstar 1. All 12 launches occurred from Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, Launch Complex 17, and all launches were successful except the maiden flight, which occurred on this date in 1960, which failed to place Echo 1 into orbit due to a problem with the second stage. The Thor performed properly, but during the coasting phase, the attitude control jets on the unproven Delta stage failed to ignite, sending the payload into the Atlantic Ocean instead of orbit. Echo A1, commonly referred to as just Echo 1, was put successfully into orbit by another Thor Delta. Today in 1982, Soyuz T-5 is launched. Soyuz T-5 was a manned spaceflight launched into Earth's orbit to the then-new Salyut 7 space station on this date in 1982. While the Soyuz T was docked, it received visits from the unmanned Progress 13 resupply spacecraft and the manned Soyuz T-6 and Soyuz T-7. This was the first expedition to the new Salyut 7 space station launched into Earth orbit earlier that year. Salyut 7 was similar to the Salyut 6 space station it superseded, but featured a number of improvements. The Soyuz T spacecraft docked with the Salyut 7 in orbit, and it was visited by the second and third expeditions to the space station. The Elbrus crew ejected a 28-kilogram amateur radio satellite from a Salyut 7 trash airlock, which the Soviets called the first launch of a communication satellite from a manned space vehicle. The Elbrus crew reoriented Salyut 7 so that the aft end of the Progress pointed towards Earth, placing the station in gravity gradient stabilization. The spacecraft launched with 2 people, the Elbrus crew, and in August of 1982, the Soyuz T-5 spacecraft was undocked, leaving Salyut 7 and Soyuz T-7 spacecraft in orbit, returning with the 3 people in the Napier crew. The initial Elbrus crew would return to Earth on the Soyuz T-7 spacecraft in December of 1982. Soyuz T-5 had spent 6 weeks in space. Today in 1992, 3 astronauts simultaneously walk in space for the first time. Launched on May 7, 1992, STS-49 was the maiden flight of the Space Shuttle Endeavour that was tasked with the primary goal of its 9-day mission being to retrieve an Intelsat 6 satellite, the Intelsat 603, which failed to leave low Earth orbit 2 years before, attach it to a new upper stage, and relaunch it to its intended geosynchronous orbit. After several attempts, the capture was completed with a 3-person extra-vehicle activity, which occurred on this date in 1992. This was the first time that 3 people from the same spacecraft walked in space at the same time. The Intelsat 603 satellite stranded in an unusable orbit since launch aboard the commercial Titan III rocket in March of 1990, was captured by crew members during an EVA and equipped with a new perigee kick motor. The satellite was subsequently released into orbit, and the new motor fired to put the spacecraft into a geosynchronous orbit for operational use. The capture required 3 EVAs, the third unscheduled but successful hand capture by astronauts Thurot, Hybe, and Ackers occurred today as Commander Brandenstein delicately maneuvered the orbiter to within a few feet of the 4,215 kilogram communication satellite. An assembly of station by EVA methods structure was erected in the cargo bay by the crew to serve as a platform to aid in the hand capture and subsequent attachments of the capture bar. Other experiments conducted included commercial protein crystal growth, ultraviolet plume imager, and the Air Force Maui optical station investigation. The mission was extended by 2 days in order to complete all the mission objectives. This is SkyTour News. I'm Amanda Curry.